Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Epic Vision Zone. My name is Jane Applegath, founder of the Epic Vision Zone, Conversations That Inspire. Each show, we offer you an inspiring person or message to bring you closer to your big dream so that you can live your epic life now. Thank you for being here. And if you're listening to the audio version, make sure that you're following this episode on your favorite app. And if watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Emily June Wilcox is a crystal-loving, coffee-drinking money healer and business mentor. Also known as a podcaster and super mom of two, Emily is on a mission to bring more conscious wealth to this planet through helping female entrepreneurs uncover their money wounds and heal them in a community to collectively up-level the planet. She believes in celebrating wins of all kinds and sizes. That means whether it's landing your first client or just finding time to meditate and connect with your inner being. She says it all matters. While building two seven-figure businesses, Emily decided to ditch the belief that it had to be hard. I love that. She tapped into feminine energy to allow more ease and joy and support her team from within. She uses energetics, woo-woo, and a sprinkle of strategy to help women call in money and amp up the joy while they build their fempreneurs. Thank you for joining us here today, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me, Jane.
Well, as I was saying to Emily just a minute ago, I'm excited to delve into this topic. So let's get started. Curious, what inspired you, Emily, to do the work that you do today?
I mean, it was very much my own inner journey, although I never expected that I would be coaching other women entrepreneurs. I always thought that I would continue doing the inner work just to help myself and my businesses, and then felt very called from the divine. I got a clear message. You're meant to be coaching other women. And so I took a step back, relinquished the CEO title from our agency and started kind of restructuring my life and my time and my schedule so that I could start talking about money. And it was scary for me too, and I kind of had to out myself on social media, and I started my podcast, but I just had this belief that we're not going to heal our money wounds if we can't talk about them. And the fact that we talk about how much food we eat, we can talk about if we're struggling with a diet, we talk about so many of the basic things that we need as humans, but money is still taboo and off limits. And I felt like we needed to change that.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. It's not a topic that comes up very often. And that's, I'd love for you to delve into why should we consider a money healer, which is one of the titles that you call yourself. And is it strictly for entrepreneurs or for everyone?
So I really believe that, you're intuitively guided to who you want to work with. So if you have this little feeling that like I'm my own upper limit problem with money, which I certainly did, then it's really diving into the subconscious work and healing your thoughts and healing your feelings around money. And so, working with a money healer can really help you do that. I think so many of the resources that we have available with money, which are all wonderful as well, are a bit more tactical and strategic. There are lots of resources on budgeting or investing and things like that. But if you are avoiding your money because every time you log into your bank account or go to do that, you feel anxious, you feel a pit in your stomach, all of these things, it doesn't really matter if there's a strategy in place telling you, oh, you've got to log in and look at your bank account once a week. You're not going to do it. So it's about healing the nervous system first and changing the way you feel about being in relationship with your money and understanding why it is that you feel anxiety when you go to look at it, as an example. So that's the work that I really love to do. And I believe that, once we change our relationship with money and we feel more healed about it, then almost any strategy works. And you can choose whatever budgeting or investing or saving strategy makes the most sense for you.
Well, that's really intuitive, because our feelings are really, that inner vibration, as I'm sure, being the individual that you work spiritually as well. I feel that
Yeah.
that's what sends out our connection or frequency into the universe. Was there one moment in particular that you can remember in your own personal experience that sort of set that trigger off? And now that you're aware of the work that you do, was there one particular moment that you could feel that, and you felt that really deep in your soul, where you just wanted to avoid the whole thing, the money issue?
Mm. One of the biggest turning points for me with my relationship with money was when I hit my first $100,000 cash month in business.
Mm.
And that had been my goal for such a long time. And I really, in hindsight, thought that hitting that goal would mean that I would feel like I'd made it, that I would feel successful, that I would feel rich, like I would feel like I had a lot of money. That I would feel safe, like the business would feel stable. And when it finally happened, I felt bad. And I'm like, why do I feel bad? Why is it feeling hard for me to celebrate this? What's going on here? And I realized I don't feel super successful. I don't all
Mm.
of a sudden feel like my business is very steady and safe. In fact, now I feel this pressure of like, how are we going to do it again?
Right.
And so it was like the first moment that I realized that I had just been moving the milestones. It was like, oh, well, 50K just wasn't enough. That's why I don't feel this way. Maybe the real answer is 70K. Nope. Turns out it's 100K. And finally hitting that, it was like the jig was up, So am I going to keep moving the milestones forever, or am I going to do the inner work? Because maybe money actually can't make me feel safe. Maybe money isn't really the thing that can make me feel successful. Maybe that's an inside job. And when I started to go within and recognize actually just how unsafe I was feeling about all of that, it changed everything. And it not only changed, I guess, even my monetary goals and desires, but it also allowed me to be in relationship with money, trust the outflow and the spending of money more than I did. I used to be kind of a hoarder. I just wanted my bank account to go up and up and up every month. And so I would hold on to it tightly, and I wouldn't necessarily let myself follow my desires and let money circulate. So that was definitely the moment for me.
Thank you for sharing that. That is, I'm sure there are many that can relate to that. I certainly relate to that. Having been in the financial industry in my previous life, it was always about reaching a new high every month.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the business. And
Right.
yeah, you think you're going to feel that you just have this anticipation of a feeling of awe, or, oh, but you're right, that work comes from within. And speaking of that, this segues perfectly into our next question. So the awareness, that light bulb went on for you. You say that trigger that sort of said you, what do I just keep upping the ante? So why do you think money is still a tough topic to have conversations about these days?
Yeah, I think we are still walking around so unhealed with money. And then we've added a societal taboo around talking about it, or we've only made little pieces of the money conversation accessible. So depending on the crowd that you mix with, it might be acceptable to complain about money or talk about a bill that you have or that there's not enough. Or it, in your crowd, it might be acceptable to talk about an investment. But to just sit around the dinner table and, speak vulnerably about like, man, I'm really struggling with worthiness and wanting to step into more wealth. And there's a part of me that feels like I'm not good enough. And and that if I have it, I'm going to be judged by the people I care about the most. It's like we're scared to have that conversation. And so we're walking around very unhealed and worried what everyone else thinks about us and thinks about how much money we make and how it measures up, but we don't really even know what the other person makes. And so we're making all of these assumptions about it. And it's not good for us. It's really not good for us. And as I mentioned in the beginning with this kind of analogy with food, food is one of these basic human experiences that really connects us. We love talking about what we're going to make and what restaurant we're going to go to and experiencing the food and talking about it. And, could you imagine if we all decided, look, food is something we all need, but don't talk about it. We don't need to talk about it. We'll just all eat when we need to eat. We know that's a part of the human experience, but no discussion around it.
Yeah.
We would never do that. That would be so silly, and it would really limit the ways that we get to connect with each other.
Yes, you're right. Because in my family, we didn't sit around the dinner table and discuss money. I mean, there was if we had a good day, or if you owned your own business, if you were doing well, but it wasn't like, wow, how much money did you make, or what did you invest in? Oh, how much did you donate this year?
Right.
We just never talked about it. And that's really interesting. I don't know if that's a society and a cultural thing as well. I think maybe even in some cultures, other cultures, it's even more taboo. They don't talk about, their finances at all. But that's you're absolutely right. That would be an interesting challenge. You should try that on your website. Challenge people to talk about money at the dinner table and let them come back with their stories. That would be really
That's
insightful,
right.
Wouldn't it? Yeah, for sure.
Totally.
So I agree completely with you. When you were saying that, I was thinking, yeah, we never sat around and talked about money, but making it so makes it more open, and people, if family members you see, that's the thing though, you get into judgments, you get into egos. Oh my gosh, I can hear my family now. It's like,
Right.
What's the matter with you? Why we associate money with our worth, and that's
Right.
the big issue. We all do it.
Totally.
So yeah, I think we're going to get into that question a little later on. But my question for you right now, and I really love that you have a passion to help women create financial wealth. Why is it that you feel that women can really be the up levelers of our conscious wealth and our communities around the world?
Hmm. Well, we are experiencing a time where we're coming more into the balance of masculine and feminine energy. We've all collectively been too far in the masculine, women included. And so, just for everyone listening, if you're not familiar with this terminology, although it's gendered, we all have both energies within us. And the masculine energy is the giving and the doing energy and the thinking energy. So the hustle, the grind, I'm going to control it, I'm going to take charge, I'm going to do the darn thing. That's masculine energy. And feminine energy is more being and receiving and trusting. And so as a planet, we're all coming into balance, but women especially are a large piece of that. And so, us sort of deprogramming from this idea that, we just need to be small and subservient and people pleasers. And, even the messaging that we received about money is like, if you look at magazines, it's like teaching women how to clip coupons and how to save money. And then if you look at like the magazines that men read, it's all about, how to invest and how to have your money make more money. So we just kind of have this old conditioning that's not serving us. And so many women have been waking up to the idea that like, no, actually more money in the hands of women is really good. It's really good for everyone. It's good for our families. It's good for our communities. It's good for our country. It's good for our planet. And you know, like the lioness, when she has food, when she hunts, she makes sure everyone is fed. The lion will eat all of the food and let his cubs starve. So when women have more resources, it's really good for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You just hit the nail on the head there at the very end. For me, you said resources. Money is a resource.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's a resource. It's a resource to share. It's a resource to give back. It's a resource to grow and therefore cultivate and inspire others. It's a resource. If we change our perspective of the way we look at it, in other words, not think of it as money, because that's I think now it's like a trigger word, but we think of it as a resource. That for me changes, it builds a whole nother perspective of what money can be for us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
and
and
it's one of the ways that we can kind of decondition from all of the things that we've projected on money.
Right. Absolutely. Perfectly said. I love that. And you're so right about women coming in. And I just saw an article in Forbes recently that listed the top female billionaires. So I was just like smiling. I like, God, this is great. And the top woman was actually in construction or some masculine industry, but I was just like, good for you. I was telling my husband, and he's like, wow, that's impressive. Because we always think it's the celebrities. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
We need more examples of that. And it is interesting. I haven't seen the list, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if many of those women did it in a more masculine way, whether it was a more masculine industry or not, just because that's a bit more of the well-worn path. It's a little easier for us to believe that we can build wealth through the hustle, the grind, this older paradigm, because we just have more examples of that. And what excites me is seeing women like Sarah Blakely,
love her.
Susie, I'm blanking on her last name, Susie Batiz, I think. She's the founder of Poopery. If you listen to an interview with her, what she is saying, and even though she maybe uses different words, is essentially she built that whole business off of intuition. And even as it got super successful and she had a board and she had all of these things, she wasn't willing to just set arbitrary business goals and go for them no matter what. She really allowed a place for her to receive inner guidance and follow that. And they have this sort of company credo around essentially like when it feels like they're on the struggle bus, when it feels like they're trying to swim upstream, they all just say, hang on, wait a second. Why are we in struggle mode? What would a downstream solution look like? And that's the new way. That's the new way that's available to all of us. And, I would love to say that I'm just a trailblazer and could do it without other examples, but I can't. It really helps to uplift me to know that there are other people, especially women, that are doing it and having a lot of success, and it helps bolster my own belief.
Yes, absolutely. That's the conversations that inspire. I mean, that you're absolutely right, because they're mentors. They become examples of what is possible. And I love, I'm not aware of the lady that you spoke of, the Potpourri owner, but I do know Sarah Blakely giving back to her employees all the time. And in fact, when she sold the company, she offered a trip to anywhere in the world to every single one of her employees, and that she would pay for two.
I saw that.
I was just like, wow, isn't that like, who would do that? I can't even
Yeah,
imagine a male CEO doing that. Not that this is a man bashing thing, because my husband's,
right.
he's probably thinking, okay, I know you guys are just male bashing, but no, it's just that that's the feminine energy, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the leadership for the 21st century, and everyone knows that leadership has to change. It does, and it is changing. It's a slow grind, but there needs to be a shift in order to sustain ourselves and move forward in this unpredictable world. We have to bend.
Yeah.
We have to change. We have to be different. Definitely. Yeah.
Absolutely. For all of us, for men too,
Yeah.
there's a reason why we're seeing more, men in leadership going on like plant medicine journeys and
Mm.
learning about meditation and mindfulness, because that way of constantly leaning forward and always in motion and overdoing and overthinking, it burns us all out, the men too. And then we look at our country and we see epidemics of chronic illnesses,
Mm-hmm.
epidemics of mental illnesses. And it's like, we are not taking good care of ourselves. What a good
Yeah.
friend of mine has been living in Europe now for a few years, and she just texted that she's about to take a month off and travel around to different countries and go to music festivals. And it's like,
Mm.
that is a normal thing in Europe, to take
Yeah.
a month off every
Mm-hmm.
summer, in addition to lots of other weeks of vacation. And we're just not balanced yet. And so the
Yeah.
more that we can model that as leaders, really show what it looks like to take care of ourselves, to prioritize our mental and physical health, to align the way that we make money with a way that feels good to us and that's regenerative and replenishing. That's the kind of thing that really brings about the sustainable change that we're looking for.
Yes, absolutely. Beautifully put, Emily. Thank you for that. Well, here's a question that's a little more possibly strategic. What are the three money musts that every entrepreneur should do with their money beginning today?
Mm. Well, I would suggest starting with getting in relationship with your money, perhaps in a new way. So, um, logging into your bank account without needing to take any action, and just sitting there looking at the numbers on the screen and noticing what stories come up. So, is there a story around how hard earned it is, or that there's less money there than there was before and that's a problem, or just whatever? Notice what comes up, and do you like that story? If you like the story, keep telling it. And if you don't, can you reach for a better feeling thought, or can you invite in some neutrality, like Jane and I were talking about? You know what? This is just a resource. And if I were logging in and looking at the number of subscribers on my email list, I probably wouldn't make that mean a whole lot about me. And I certainly wouldn't feel unsafe, right? If I didn't have a certain number of email subscribers. So, is it possible that I'm projecting my safety, or I'm projecting my worth onto these numbers on a screen? So that's my number one, is get into relationship with your money and start to notice what stories come up. Number two, if you don't like the story that you're telling yourself, reach for a better feeling thought. You get to create the story. So why are you telling yourself a story that ends with you not having a roof over your head? I mean, I don't know if you've ever done that, Jane, but my mind has gone crazy before, where it's like all of a sudden the end of the story is like, we're destitute, we don't have anywhere to live, everything's imploded.
Oh, no.
And it's like, wait a second. If I'm writing the story and I'm telling it to myself, why am I telling myself this terrible one that ends with nothing that I want to happen? So changing that story. And then number three, really practice seeing abundance in places other than money. So Jane, you mentioned it when we were talking about feelings, how our feelings really are our magnet. They're sort of the beacon that we're putting out to the universe, and then they magnetize whatever comes back to us. And often our relationship with money is complicated, so it can be the hardest place for us to really have a clean feeling of abundance. But when we look at a meadow that's just full of flowers as far as the eye can see, that's abundance. I'm in Southern California, and you know, there'll be a lemon tree that has like 400 lemons on it. That's abundance. That's in one person's yard. If they don't give those away, they're just going to rot on the ground. It's like way more lemons than one family could ever eat. It's abundance. And there are so many places where abundance is making itself evidenced in our lives. And when we decide that we want to be in for it, it really helps change our vibration and change our feeling. And then it attracts to us more situations that allow us to feel that way.
Yes, absolutely. The changing your thoughts changes your vibration. Yeah. It really, and you're right. We create, what we forget is that we do create our own reality. And it has been a scientific study as to why we always go to the negative, because humans usually do. But of course, now they've studied that it's the reptilian brain, and it wants to protect us. So it always goes to the worst case scenario. But just having that knowledge too helps you, because you're like, I'm not crazy. It's just my reptilian brain. And okay, I hear you, but just calm down. We're not going there today or next week. We're going to go this way instead. But I enjoyed your story because it made me smile, because you're like, wait a minute, why am I going this way when I can go that way? Right. And that's the best way to stop your thinking. You go, whoa, I'm the master of my thinking. What am I doing to myself? But thank you. Those were very useful. I love it. And now you have something called the wealth codes. Tell us about those.
So when I'm talking about wealth codes, I'm really speaking about sort of this ancient wisdom that we can tap into that allow us to unlock these new ways of thinking and feeling about money, allowing it to more effortlessly flow in. And it's not like the 10 commandments, right? Where they're just etched in stone and there's only 10 of them, and, a certain number of people know it and you've got to go learn from them. So it's not like I'm this exalted person who has all the wealth codes, and if you just pay me a certain amount, I will give them to you. It's really more about our own exploration, but just really believing that they're available to us. There's nothing inherently different about a 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 figure earner than anybody else. And they've accessed and tapped into these energetic codes that are available to all of us. And I'm going to go a little woo here for a second, but if you believe that we're not just here for one lifetime, this is something that I remind myself of, and it's helpful for a lot of my clients, because sometimes we play the comparison game and we feel behind. And it's not just with money, by the way. Like the 37-year-old woman who's not married feels behind. She feels like, I'm ready to call in my husband. I'm ready to have kids. I'm behind. So we do lots of areas of our life. But with money, I know my brain was always looking at the examples of the people who made more than me, were further ahead than me, or were younger than me. And so then it always made me feel like, I wasn't doing enough, or I wasn't where I needed to be. And when I started thinking about it from a more macro perspective, it's like, who even knows what ahead and behind is? We're taking evidence of one lifetime, Well, that person who's a billionaire, what if it took them like 5,000 lifetimes to crack the wealth code?
Mm.
And maybe you're only on lifetime number 2,000 and you're actually way ahead of them. They've just been at it longer. It's like, we don't know. And so again, going back to that idea of the story, why tell ourselves a story that we're behind when we really have such a limited understanding in the scope of one lifetime? And that's why I talk about walking the joyous path to millions, because it's really more about the joyous path than it is the millions. It's like, can we enjoy the journey and can we look for the ways to appreciate it versus I got to just get the wealth codes and I got to get ahead of everybody else. And I know, because I used to operate that way. So if you feel resonance with that, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, but it does mean that there's a different way available if you choose it.
So are there such things as wealth codes then, or is that something that you teach that there aren't wealth codes? I wasn't quite sure. I mean, I understand your analogy, and certainly that puts a whole new perspective on how you see whether your judgment is correct or not, because that's something in yoga that they teach is non-judgment. But absolutely, we all do comparisons. It's a human fault, because you're right. I love that you said we don't know how long that person has been here. If you believe in, we have second lives, third lives, thousands of lives. So I love that perspective. And then again, I'm not sure, are there money codes or are there not money codes?
Yeah, there are wealth codes, but when I'm using that terminology, again, it's not that there's these certain set, but it's sort of like these aha moments where you've tapped into this ancient wisdom. So like one wealth code is, just using examples that we've talked about in this conversation, I would consider it a wealth code that money is a neutral resource. I would consider it a wealth code that money comes from universe or source or God, and it flows through people. It's a wealth code to understand that money is just money, and having more of it isn't necessarily going to make you feel safe or successful or worthy. So there are all these little lessons, I guess I would say, that when they land in your body and you actually embody it, then you're mastering that code. Does that make sense?
Totally. Absolutely. Yes, that makes total sense to me. They're the lessons. They're changing your viewpoint or being aware of the negative perspective and then changing it, but embodying that. So that is actually a perfect segue, because I was going to ask you why it is important to notice what we are telling ourselves about money. And this is what you were just saying. And then replace the negative serving money mantras with something more powerful. So in essence, those codes or lessons, whatever you want to refer them to, these are the mantras that we want to replace the negative ones with positive. Does that sound about right? Because I think it is very important how we talk to ourselves about money.
Yes. Yeah. And just to deepen the conversation, since we've been talking about this, I would say notice how you're feeling about money. Even more than what your thoughts are, it's how you feel. Because I don't know if you've ever had this happen, Jane, but I've had it happen before where I'm saying the right affirmation, but if I was being really honest with myself, it didn't actually feel good. Have you ever had that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Noticing our feeling is actually more important, because if you wake up every day and you're like, I am a wealthy woman, but the way that it actually makes you feel is a little constricted or a little anxious or a little bit like an imposter, and there's a part of you that's feeling like, no, I'm not. How do I become a wealthy woman? Oh, I've been saying these affirmations every day. Now, what am I going to do about it? Well, you're not actually helping yourself. because the thoughts are correct, but the feelings they are eliciting are not helpful feelings. And so it actually would be an improvement for you to drop that affirmation altogether. Or maybe you could find an affirmation that actually would feel good, which is, I'm open to learning how to become a wealthy woman. I'm willing to believe that it's possible for me to be a wealthy woman. And it's like, on paper, maybe those affirmations don't sound as powerful, but if the words make it feel more true for you and regulate your nervous system and allow it in, then it is good. That is a good affirmation for you. So when we think about money talk, we want to also notice the feelings.
That is really powerful. I love that. You need to make a little booklet of all the different ways of saying things like that. Seriously, because you're right. It's the alignment. If your thoughts are not in alignment with your emotions, which is your body in motion, which is your frequency, then, well, your frequency is going to be completely off. And the alignment is so important. And you're right. You're not serving yourself. You're disservicing yourself, because then you go into a state of anxiety, stress, because like you said, you start to think, well, now how am I going to do that? It's like, I'm a wealthy woman. Yeah, sure you are. You're just kidding yourself. You've been saying that for a year, and where are you? And then your whole mind goes down that path. And then, of course, you're creating that reality. But, oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. I also heard another very powerful way to change an affirmation, which would be, or a mantra, which would be, you ask yourself the question, because then your mind goes in a different direction, where you say, how did I become so rich? How did I become so wealthy? Right? How did I become how did I become so influential? Because then your mind it completely changes the circuitry, because then your mind goes to work on thinking of the how. And then you're like, yeah, I connected with people. I loved what I do. Yeah. Isn't that amazing? It totally changes your energy.
I am obsessed with that practice. I'm totally going to use that.
Do it, because I'm telling you, and it changes your energy, because instead of the pushing, you're drawing, you're accessing different areas of your mind in order to figure it out. So your mind doesn't go to the stress or the fight or flight. It goes to, okay, I've got to figure this out. Right. I thought that was fascinating. It's actually a gentleman by the name of Noah. I forgot his last name. He's on my podcast, so check it out. But he actually haven't launched him yet. But he has an entire little book, and it's called Affirmations, and they're questions. They were affirmations, but now they're affirmations. And I'm glad you love it, because I thought that was so powerful. I was like, wow, you're right. So I'm glad I was able to.
It's genius. I mean, I've always said it's like when we ask our mind different questions, then we get a totally different answer. And that is so genius. Thank you, Noah.
Yeah. Oh, you're very welcome. I also said thank you for him. But see, this is what we do. We share and we collaborate and we learn. And anything that adds to our perspective and our feelings and uplifts us and inspires us. That's what the whole reason is for all of this. So I'm glad that would be helpful. But and thank you also for the other switch of the affirmations, like saying, I am willing to receive wealth. I am willing to be open to becoming a wealthy woman. I mean, those are great too, because then you're in the mode of receiving, which is how you want to be. Yeah, absolutely. I get it. I love it. Thank you so much. So what are money wounds. I think you discussed that, but how do they block us from the wealth that we desire?
Yeah, so money wounds are the stored traumas in our body and the unhealthy thought patterns that we think about money. And what I've learned in working with hundreds of entrepreneurs, although it's not just entrepreneurs, but that just happens to be who I focus on, is that there are 6 core money wounds. And you won't have all of them, but you'll probably have 2 or 3 that you really resonate with. And just being able to diagnose them and understand them and kind of learn how they feel in your body is a really important first step, because it's like if you have a mystery illness and you're walking around with no diagnosis, you can think you're crazy, you can think you're broken. But when a doctor finally tells you, no, this is what it is, and here are all the associated symptoms, it's like, oh my gosh, that and that and that. So when we understand that we have money wounds, that they're not us, they're just stories and beliefs and passed down patterns that have turned into, some stored trauma in our bodies, then we can start healing them, and we can start recognizing, as we engage with money, which is like so many times all day, every day, when we're in our sovereignty and when one of our wounds is having a moment, is flaring up and is wanting to control the way that we think and act. So I'm happy to list the 6 money wounds if it's helpful, but that's essentially what they are.
Here we go. Again, I find that for me, what's resonating is it's all perspective. Like if you look at, like you become aware, and then you have an understanding of what it is that you're feeling and what it is you're going through. You can address it at a much more cognitive level, as opposed to going into that fight or flight. And because of that, you calm your system down, which your energy stays at a better level. And so by doing, knowledge is, the more knowledge we have, the more we have to pull from to lift us up. So yes.
Absolutely. And there's a quote from Carl Jung: until we make the unconscious conscious, it will direct our life and we will call it fate. So when you have undiagnosed money wounds, they will direct your life and you will call it fate. You will be like, I don't understand why it is that every time I get some extra money in my bank account, something happens. The car breaks down. There's a water leak. There's a school field trip and I have to pay extra for that. It will feel like you are a victim of circumstance, but really it's your subconscious or your unconscious mind that's directing the show, because you have an unhealed money wound. And in the example I'm giving, it would be a disappearing money wound, which is that a lot of money in the account actually doesn't feel safe. You expect that it's going to abandon you. You don't trust it. And so you'd rather get rid of it than have it sitting there just as a ticking time bomb, waiting for it to abandon you. But it's all happening at the subconscious level. So we can really feel like we're a victim of circumstance until we bring it into our conscious awareness, as you mentioned. Once it's in our conscious awareness, we can do something with it, and we can start to put a little distance between feeling a certain way and acting. Because the actions themselves are neutral, and they can really be good or bad, but it depends on what the underlying feeling is. So if someone wants to hire a financial advisor, that could be a really wonderful thing. They might be in their sovereignty. They might feel intuitively guided to this person. It might feel like a total boss move to have this financial advisor. Or they might have a money trust wound, meaning I don't trust myself with money, and be in their damsel in distress, looking for a white knight that can come in and save the day, that can make all their money decisions for them so that they can't screw it up. Well, then hiring that financial advisor is going to get you a really different outcome, because the underlying energetics are, I don't trust myself. I think I can screw money up. Someone else has to save me. So we always have to address the feelings, because the action itself is neutral.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really deep. That's in the sense that when you take action like that, or when you have the money and then something happens and out the door it goes, because things like that used to happen to me. They don't anymore. But I know someone who it does happen to them. Yeah. And you would never, ever consider that that's the reason why. It'd be like, I'm not causing this. That's ridiculous. How is that possible? But yeah, you're right, because the universe always says yes. Yeah. So if you're putting it out there, yeah, I tell you, Emily, it's deep work, but it's fascinating and enlightening. So enlightening when you get it. I mean, I've been studying Dr. Joe Dispenza and all of these thought leaders for so long. Candace Pert, some of the science, really, I love the science behind it, but when it finally clicks, it really makes a lot of sense, because you really do. There is the way to muscle your way into things, like you said, but that just creates more stress, and it's hard. It's hard work. But yes, wow, that was really insightful. And I could see where some people would go, "Oh, you're ridiculous." That's just not the case. But I know, and you know that it is the case for sure. So
totally. Well, and I feel like, thank goodness there are so many money teachers out there, because you may not resonate with me, like middle class white girl, never on the streets, never what, it's like, that's fine. And if you think everything that I'm saying is crazy, then it's like, well, go do Dave Ramsey, like there's so many ways to work on money. But the last thing I'll say about that is, we're in a lifelong relationship with money. Mm-hmm. And anyone who's been in a marriage or a long-term relationship, you understand that you got to continue to give it love and give it attention and work on growing together. No one would ever say like, well, I worked on my marriage once. We had a rough patch, checked that box. Now we're good forever. And it's like the same is true with money. So we don't have to look at it as this thing where now we've checked that box, we've done the money work and we're done. It's like we're in a relationship with money until the day we die. So to me, it's only natural that we continue to check in on how we're feeling and that we continue to evolve the relationship over time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting. It's in the English language, but another word for money is currency. And a current is frequency. Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I just thought of that. Wow. What's your currency? What's your frequency? Yeah. Right. Well, we could go on. I tell you, some of the aha moments are coming, but there's something that you said here in your bio, and I love it because I agree 100%. Why is celebrating our wins of any kind vital to our money mindset?
Whew, because it's the only time in this game of warmer, colder that we play with the universe that we get to say, yes, red hot, we did it. You found the thing. We did so well. And we often don't do that because we move the goalposts, which by the way is totally natural. That's part of the human experience, is that we always want to grow and evolve. And by the time we've got it in the bag and we know that we're about to hit a certain goal, we're already naturally dreaming into the next thing. That's perfectly fine. But when we can celebrate, and this is something that I learned from a past mentor of mine, her name's Melanie Ann Lair. She talks about how celebration is a party thrown in the name of gratitude. I love that because I used to feel like by the time could put together a celebration, I didn't feel excited anymore. And so
Mm.
then maybe I wouldn't want to do it. But it's like, but it's not about the excitement. The excitement wanes pretty quickly, but it's about the gratitude. This was something that I used to dream about. It was on my vision board and now I have it. Holy smokes. Can I just like give a cheers to the universe and say, look at us, we did it?
We forget, and as women particularly, we just, I don't know, you're a mom, so you know that you just go and go and go, and it's like, okay, well, I accomplished that, but I don't have time, great, I did that. Now on to the next chore, whatever, on to the next target. But if you stop and pause and say, you know what, I'm pretty damn special. Right. I sometimes say that, and my husband's like, well, aren't you the big head? And I said, yeah, I am. And you know what? It makes me happy. I'm thinking, totally. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't go around telling strangers that, but still, it puts a smile on my face, at least for that reason. But it's when you accomplish something and you actually pause to celebrate that, it is gratitude. You're being grateful for your accomplishments, because right. We need to be grateful for ourselves. It's like namaste. It's I honor the divine within you. Well, we need to honor the divine within ourselves, right? And that's Absolutely. What namaste. Yeah. I love that what it stands for. So that's what it's all about. So tell us then, Emily, about your money healing masterclass.
Yeah, so I'll back up a second, which is I really recommend that people start with the quiz. So if you go to moneywoundsquiz.com, it's a free resource to diagnose your money wounds. And at the end, it invites you to put in your email. You don't have to, but if you do, not only do we email you the results so that you have them to look back on, but then we also email you the link to a money healing masterclass. So it's 2 hours of content that really dives deeper into each of the 6 money wounds, what their symptoms are, how they might show up in your life, and how you can start to heal them.
I have all of that information too on the Epic Vision Zone bio pages for everyone, just in case you didn't have a chance to mark that down. And if there was one critical message that you could share with the world today, Emily, what would that be?
I think I'm going to go back to what we talked about before, which is talk about your money. Mm-hmm. Just pick one person that you wouldn't normally talk to about money and be brave enough to have that conversation. But even in thinking about having the conversation, I bet you'll have so many ahas. You'll notice what you're afraid of. Oh gosh, are they going to think I'm arrogant, or that I've got way more? Or are they going to start hitting me up for money? Or whatever the story is, just in the noticing it, all of a sudden now it's in your conscious mind and you have a chance to rewrite it. But also it just invites in a little bit more of that human connection, and it helps us to neutralize money, to treat it as a currency, as a frequency, not something that is a badge of honor or means anything about us and who we are and how worthy we are. And I really believe that simple conversation can help heal so much.
You're right. I have sometimes my mind goes a little, I have a funny imagination. So I was picturing myself in a Forrest Gump moment where I'd sit on a bench beside a stranger and say, I'd like to talk to you about money. I don't know why. My mind just went right to the Forrest Gump, where he's sitting there with his box of chocolates. Yep. I sit there with a box of money and say, I'd like to talk to you about money. I don't know why. But that would be funny. I mean, I'd have to video it, because it would be one of those things you'd certainly want to post. And I'd be, okay, let's talk about money. How much you got in the box, lady? It's like none of your business.
Anyway, there's someone who's actually built a whole business around this. I can't remember what the Instagram handle is. I think it's like Financial Street or something like that. I'll see if I can look it up while we're talking, but it's so cool because she goes around and interviews people on the street, mic in hand, and asks them how much money they make and what they do and if they think it's enough and if they think they're earning a living wage. And she just like does the whole spectrum and goes across all different cities in the US. And I just think it's so cool. And it's fascinating. You know, we're all a little voyeuristic about money. So it's really interesting to hear people's responses.
Wow. When you find that, just send it over to me. I'd love to connect with her.
I will.
That sounds so much fun. I could relate
you know
to
what
that
it's
for
called?
sure. What?
I'm remembering now. It's called, at least on Instagram, the handle is Salary Transparent Street.
Okay.
Salary Transparent
Street. I love it. Oh, that's great.
And it's so cool because it's like a young woman who started it, and it was just like a passion project, and now she like quit her day job and is all in on Salary Transparent Street.
Wow. Yeah, I could see that. That's right up your alley. Oh my gosh. You have to connect with her for sure.
I know. Maybe I'll interview her on my podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because we're here on the Epic Vision Zone, I have one last question. If your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
Walking the Joyous Path to Millions.
I love that. That is absolutely perfect. Well, thank you again, Emily, for joining us here today. And for information and to connect with Emily, go to the Epic Vision Zone bio pages where you will find all of her social media and direct contact information. And don't forget to take advantage of that free offer that she has. It sounds wonderful. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath and reach out to me at janeapplegath.com where you can access your free download, The Keys to Your Dreams. Sending you much love and success. This is the Epic Vision Zone, transforming your dreams into epic success.